What's up, everybody? It's your boy. 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 AKA Reed from Famous Nerd. Today's video is about severe anxiety, what it looks like, how to combat it, how I've managed it over the years. If you end up liking this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. You can also join these beautiful people on the screen right here by clicking the join button to become a member of the channel, whereupon you will get exclusive access to some members only videos, as well as access to every video a few days early. You can also join the Shameless Nerd Discord at the link in the description, and you can email me with any questions, comments, concerns, or your favorite Porter Robinson lyric at readfromshamelessnerd@gmail.com. All right, let's get into it. On September 14th, 2017, I smoked a cigarette with my buddy to celebrate my first ever mixtape coming out. I used to rap in college. No, you cannot find it. No, you don't want to. Leading up to this point, I had for a while been starting to have these weird episodes where whenever I would drink, as one does in college, or especially when I would do other things, my hands would start to kind of lock up, my chest would get tight. I would start to worry that there was something wrong with my heart, that it was going to burst or something, and I would have to leave the party, or more often than a party, leave the group of 8 guys sitting in silence around a Little Caesars Pizza watching music videos and go sit in my car until it passed. I was a 19-year-old guy, so I did what every responsible 19-year-old guy does, and of course ignored this entirely and hoped it would stop happening. Well, on September 14th, 2017, I smoked a nasty little LMN blue cigarette with my buddy, and then my hands started to lock up almost entirely. I felt dizzy. I started to get really severe tunnel vision, so I got in my stick shift Hyundai Accent and drove myself to the emergency room nearly blind with club hands. I pulled into the ambulance parking roundabout and apparently somehow stumbled out of the passenger side of my car, I'll get to that later, and like zombie walked into the emergency room believing that I was having a heart attack. I hobbled up to the counter and through labored breaths I said, "Hey, I'm dying, I think." And the lady, I shit you not, she goes, okay, well, sweetie, let me get your insurance information. Hold on one second here. Let me find the form. Hold on. Here, can you fill this out for me, please? And I held up my contorted, useless, like locked up hands and I said, no. And then she allowed me to dictate to her as my condition worsened, my name and address and emergency contacts and insurance information, my family history, writing at the slowest pace I've ever witnessed. And when we got to the end, she goes, okay, sweetie, well, have a seat out there in the lobby and somebody will get to you soon. And I, crying at the counter, just hobbled away. I couldn't sit down because I couldn't see a chair anywhere, so I sort of limped back and forth, making this weird sound because I couldn't breathe, this sort of like sound as my vision narrowed. The numbness in my hands made its way up to my arms. My heartbeat became imperceptible entirely. At the time, I thought because it had stopped, but later I found out it was due to it beating at over 210 beats per minute. And I paced back and forth, dragging my club limbs, moaning, crying for so long that by the time I had been called back by a doctor, a lot of it had stopped. The doctors then did an EKG and told me that my heart was actually totally fine and healthy. They did some other exams and reported that my lungs were operating normally. They did a blood test and found nothing out of the ordinary except high cholesterol for my age, which made sense that I was 5'8" and 215 pounds of almost entirely pepperoni and butter, and informed me that what I had was not a heart attack, but a severe panic attack. The doctor in the emergency room explained to me what was happening, how most of the symptoms I experienced were a result of like hyperventilation, and she showed me some breathing techniques. She recommended therapy, and then after a while, if that didn't work out, she said that there are some medications that I could try, and then referred me to a specialist. So I left the emergency room. I found my car still running in the ambulance roundabout with the passenger door open over 3 hours later, and I drove home. I later saw that specialist who diagnosed me with severe generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, and panic disorder, said that I likely had moderate obsessive compulsive disorder, and recommended that I started therapy and then go from there regarding potentially starting medication or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And in the following months, I started therapy. My mom had just been killed a few months prior in one of the most bizarre murders you will ever hear of. I was deeply unhealthy, gaining over 65 pounds in only 4 months. I was smoking and drinking all the time. I was doing nothing but playing video games and going to work at night, going to and not paying attention to classes during the day. My girlfriend at the time was living with me and was pretty toxic and unhealthy for me. I was having an identity crisis about like sexuality and religion and career goals and other family issues, and I was working 40 hours a week while in college trying to stay afloat. Therapy helped a little bit, and due to that, I never started medication because also part of my anxiety was like about medication, probably kind of like PTSD from being exposed to like a lot of overdose deaths in my family at a young age, growing up around drugs and stuff, and I was like scared to take Tylenol, much less something I considered to be like a big boy scary medication. So I kind of just tried my best. I went to therapy and I just like suffered for a really long time, and I did experiments on myself, which resulted in this channel, and which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I want to talk about anxiety disorder for a bit. People talk about anxiety a lot. It's a great thing, normalizing discussion of mental illnesses and of mental health issues, and it's a great thing that these issues are becoming less stigmatized. People with schizophrenia used to be locked in torture asylums, essentially. Women with depression up until the late 20th century were diagnosed with melancholy or hysteria, and as a treatment were prescribed a massive dose of, hey, shut up about that, please. Like, we have come a really long way with regard to mental health, and that's a massive net positive. Anxiety in particular, though, is a really interesting one because anxiety, the state of feeling anxious in brief spurts, is a perfectly natural and healthy reality of human existence. It is deeply important to feel anxious. If humans were unable to healthily worry about the future, we wouldn't have survived as a species. That kind of storytelling, like hypotheticalizing the future, is one of our few superpowers. When you get a little worked up before taking a big test, or when you feel fluttery and nervous before performing on stage, or on your wedding day, or before a job interview, that is anxiety, but it's not an anxiety disorder. And one of the problems with the discourse around anxiety and the societal perspective on it on just like a person-to-person level is that so many people experience healthy, normal anxiety that hearing someone has an anxiety disorder feels a little silly. I'm gonna be honest, until I was 19, it felt a little silly to me. It feels dramatic to hear someone say, oh, I have to take medicine because I have an anxiety disorder, when so many people themselves experience anxiety all the time, and all they have to do is like take a deep breath and whisper, you got this, to themselves, and like they're in a Disney movie. Anxiety is real, it's healthy, it's normal, and it is most certainly not an anxiety disorder. An anxiety disorder is absolutely miserable. It is torturous. It is exhausting and draining and so incredibly difficult to manage. When people on TikTok say they have crippling anxiety and they mean that they get a little nervous on a first date, that really bothers me. That phrase, crippling anxiety, used to be literal. What I would like to do first is to try to effectively depict what it is like to have a real anxiety disorder on a day-to-day basis, just to try to like illustrate and to like legitimize maybe what I'm saying at the end of this video when I make some recommendations based on what I've done over the years, like in those experiments on myself that I mentioned earlier. And maybe people out there will feel a little validated in hearing it like depicted in this way as well. I felt so incredibly alone, like there was no one in the world going through what I was going through when I was at the peak of my anxiety. My ex-girlfriend didn't understand, my dad, my siblings, my friends, no one understood what I was going through, and it made it so much harder. Having an anxiety disorder sucks ass. For 8+ years, when I would wake up in the morning, the first thing that I would do is immediately compulsively check my pulse. I would wake up deeply stressed out, worrying about my heart and my heart rate, and I would do a timer for 30 seconds, count my heart rate, and then try to calm myself down. I would wake up in the morning by trying to calm myself down, seeing if I could like breathe deeply or lower my heart rate a little bit before I got out of bed. Throughout the day, I would constantly be hyper aware of any change in my body, any slight discomfort or ache or pain or increase in heart rate, and I was always hyper aware of that, of my heart rate. You know when you lay down at night, sometimes you become conscious of your heartbeat for a minute and it kind of messes with you for a second and you have to like kind of tune it back out, or when you get a cut on your finger and your like finger has a heartbeat. That was me all day, every single day from the second I woke up until I went to bed. And any increase in that heart rate would trigger my anxiety and make it worse, and it would compound and cycle, spiraling in on itself. When you're sick, your heart rate is increased as your body works to fight off the illness. When you get hot, your heart rate increases. When you get nervous, when you get up after sitting down for a while, when you eat. And so anytime I did anything, I would start to freak out a little bit. Is this normal? Is this okay? What should my heart rate be right now? Is this high? Is this too low? And it's not like I could turn it off or stop thinking about it. I could feel it. It's my heartbeat. It's not going anywhere, hopefully, right? And as a result of this, I was super sedentary because I was worried about spiking my heart rate, which caused me to gain a bunch of weight, which caused me to have a higher heart rate, which made things worse. And every time that I ate, I would start to panic. Every time I had to go to one of my giant auditorium college classes, I would start to panic. Every time I had to get ready for work, I would start to panic. And I had to eat. I had to go to work. I couldn't lock myself in a room and like detox from this stuff. It was mandatory. It's the same reason that eating disorders are so brutal and sad. Imagine being being addicted to heroin, but you had to somehow do heroin 3 times a day or you would die. That shit is miserable. And at any time while I was freaking out about my heart rate, if I lost control for even a split second, if the lid came off, the physical symptoms of my mental anxiety would start to manifest, which would make it all worse. Symptoms of anxiety are things like chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, sweating, trembling. You know what else has symptoms like chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, sweating, trembling? A heart attack, which is what I was having anxiety about. So if I lost focus for a half a second, I would immediately start getting physical, real evidence of the exact shit that I was worried about in the first place. And that all sucks. That's all limiting and hard to manage. But what was even worse about all of it is the stress that somebody struggling with this stuff is under. That constant vigilance, that state of like self-surveillance, that constant worry and stress that you're living with on a day-to-day basis, trying to just make it through the day while you're feeling insane and like a massive weirdo loser while all of this is going on, while you're dealing with all the actual symptoms of the disorder, is exhausting as hell. I used to have brief periods of peace, and then I would realize I was hungry and get so panicked about having to eat that I would cry while I'm making like a turkey sandwich or whatever the hell. I used to take my planning periods at work, I'm a teacher, and I would lie flat on the floor behind my desk and just like deep breathe and try to walk myself back down every day for months at a time. I was rude to my friends and family. I was irritable and short. I couldn't enjoy things. I turned down an invitation from my rich uncle to watch my favorite sport team in the world, which means a lot to me, play in the national championship. I turned down an opportunity from my school to travel across the country to a conference, all expenses paid with 3 additional days off. I probably ruined my relationship at the time because of the state that I was in. I mean, I think she had something to do with it too. She was pretty shitty to me, but also whatever. And throughout all of this, it felt hopeless because the things I needed to do to get better seemed impossible because of the disorder. I couldn't work out and get in better shape. I couldn't eat better. I couldn't quit nicotine. I couldn't find hobbies and get off my phone. I couldn't reach out to friends because I couldn't move without damn near having a panic attack. I couldn't talk to anyone because I felt insane. I couldn't eat lunch sometimes. An anxiety disorder, panic disorder, is not the same thing as we all feel when our crush says hi to us. This was the darkest period of my life. It was hell, man. But here I am 11 years later, extremely happy with my life. I'm the youngest English department chair in the county in which I teach, the biggest county in the state. I have made at least 1 video a week for this YouTube channel since January 1st of 2025. I've lost over 60 pounds since college. I don't smoke or vape or use Zen or whatever the hell you crazy kids are doing nowadays. With a girl so pretty, I have a hard time believing she isn't in like desperate need of corrective vision surgery. And my beautiful, amazing, hilarious, intimidatingly smart son just turned 4 years old. I am in 3 bands. I cook. I do all kinds of labor-intensive DIY projects at my house. I'm doing all of this shit that 2, 5, 8, 10 years ago I would have thought was entirely impossible. Like, impossible. So for the final part of this video, I would like to give my perspective, my thoughts on what anyone out there struggling like I have in my life could try with their anxiety. And this goes for somebody suffering as severely as I was, or someone who is just kind of wound a little tight and wants to be better, generally speaking. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I tried every single thing imaginable for my anxiety over the course of about 10 years, and I can tell you what worked for me. And before I get into that, a little disclaimer. For a lot of people, the answer is just medication, and that's fine. I'm not anti-medication. I believe that severe anxiety is usually generally caused predominantly by actionable lifestyle issues and like unaddressed trauma, and can usually generally be treated by figuring out what it is that your anxiety is telling you is problematic about your life based on my experiences, which I will get into. But I am 100% not anti-medication. Anxiety medication has saved thousands of lives, and for many people, the answer is find a medication that works for you, and that is valid and beautiful and just as brave and impressive and as wonderful as anything else. This is not a moral argument on behalf of bootstrapsers. This is not an argument against trying medication. However, medication didn't work for me, and this did. I think that there does need to be a larger conversation about preventative treatment instead of the like diagnose treat model of the current healthcare system. I think that things like sleep, diet, exercise, etc. should be taken seriously as rehabilitative and medical interventions for illnesses, mental and physical. Like, for example, I read a study about which Dr. Julie Graylow, the chief medical officer of the American Society of Clinical Oncology, said that the quality of its findings was the highest level of evidence, which showed that exercise was the single most effective intervention for cancer, more effective than chemotherapy. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, co-signed by Charles Swanson, the chief clinician of Cancer Research UK, Pamela Kuntz, the department head of the Yale School of Medicine, and Sir Stephen Powis, the national medical director of NHS England. It's a slippery slope, and there are certainly holistic medicine, broccoli sprout eating, anti-vax fanatics who co-opt some of these sentiments and undermine their validity. And there are, absolutely, of course it should go without saying, illnesses and diseases that require a medication for intervention, but it should be a conversation being had very carefully and proactively. And for me, an over 9-year battle with anxiety and panic disorder and OCD so severe that I was afraid to leave my house ended very simply. For me, my anxiety seemed to have been a miserable, horrible, torturous physical manifestation of my body. Your brain is a part of your body, guys. That's another conversation we need to be having. Of my body screaming at me, please make changes. And over the next 8 years, I slowly, begrudgingly, but desperately made those changes, and I'm embarrassed and bitter to say that it was pretty easy in retrospect. I suffered for so long. I was so deeply miserable and exhausted for so long. And now I still struggle on occasion. I still have like minor relapses where I slip into those kind of spirals here and there. But on average, my day is anxiety-free entirely. Probably 90% of the time, it is not on my mind at all. And you know what the medicine was? Get off my phone, break up with my girlfriend, stop eating lunch, and quit nicotine. I'm dead ass serious. Those 4 things saved my life. I'll go into a little detail, but they're pretty much what they sound like. And they resulted in other behaviors which snowballed in a positive way and like made things better. But those 4 things, after 9 years of struggling, were literally all that it took. During that time, I was, like many of us, spending an above even an American average, highest in the world, of my day looking at my phone. My average screen time was around 10 hours a day. I was terrified of living in the real world, of looking up and seeing myself in the mirror, of sitting with my scary, scary thoughts for more than 15 seconds at a time, that it felt impossible to get off my phone. It felt like it was helping me. And annoyingly, it was maybe the biggest problem. 3 years ago, I deleted every social media app from my phone, and within a month of doing so, my eyes felt brighter, my chest was lighter, my thoughts slowed down, I began to feel human again, and since then I've become even more radicalized. Some of you who watch my channel regularly will have seen videos about curation algorithms and dumb phones and digital detoxing, etc. I've since researched a lot about why this made such a difference in my brain, but I won't even go into any of that here. I'm just telling you that from experience, coming from where I was coming from, I got the hell off my phone and it changed my life. In my unexpert armchair opinion, to me, a large part of my anxiety was my brain screaming that it needed space, it needed fresh air, so to speak. And I got off my phone, and literally within weeks, I felt massively different, a lot closer to healthy. So that's one. Cut back on your screen time or get a dumb phone altogether. And if you do, you can use my affiliate link in the description to help support the channel. The second thing that I did was break up with my girlfriend. Well, actually, in retrospect, I had feelings for someone else for over 10 years who at that point I'd always resented my then girlfriend for pulling me away from, who I told one night that I was in love with within earshot of my then girlfriend because I was too much of a spineless weasel to end things with my girlfriend like a grown-up, and I needed her to break up with me. And then I went on to date a completely different person for the next 3 years before I actually even ended up dating that original person I'd confessed my love for, which actually just ended several months ago, turning out to not quite be the storybook person for me that I'd always thought it would be and fantasized about, and ended up being the hardest relationship that I've ever lived through, which tried really hard to ruin what was otherwise a pretty incredible 2025 for me. And things are looking up for me love-wise right now, all is well. But I was super unhappy in that relationship in 2019. We were unhappy together, and getting out of that relationship was a major help for my anxiety, which seemed unrelated. It feels so obvious in retrospect, but if your brain is not functioning right, it just might be your subconscious telling you like, hey, you're making a mistake, hey, this person or this job or this life decision isn't the right decision. And instead of denying that, if you make that change, which you know intuitively is a necessary change, that will probably be a major step. Okay, these next two are a little more controversial. Like I've mentioned in this video, I'm a pretty small guy. I'm pretty like narrow. I have little bird legs. I'm 5'8", so I'm not like tiny, but I'm not genetically meant to be a big guy by any means. And when my anxiety was at its peak, I weighed 210 pounds. I looked insane. My body was not supposed to be carrying that weight. That's a natural weight for some people. It was not for me. And I felt like shit. I looked like shit. I hated myself. I hated looking in the mirror. I had to get healthy. But I was in college. I was broke. I didn't know how to cook. I was going through mental hell. I didn't have the mental wherewithal to adhere to a strict healthy diet and exercise regimen. I could barely get out of bed half the time. So what I started doing was I started eating dinner only. This was 2019. This was a little bit before like intermittent fasting was as well known as it is now, but it was around and I'd heard about it on like a podcast or something. So I was like, well, that'll save me money. Maybe it'll help. I've never really been like a breakfast kind of guy anyway, so it wasn't like that hard really. I just stopped eating lunch. And within a year or so, I lost over 60 pounds. And naturally, as I started to lose some of the weight, I started to feel better about myself. I started to get a little like mentally healthier because of that confidence boost, which allowed me to like start working out a little bit, but not much really. And the majority of what I did to go from, here we go, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna show the picture. From this to this was literally just skipping lunch every day. I still function this way for the most part now, and intermittent fasting has been shown to be a pretty uncontroversially good thing for most people, not for everybody, but for most people. And if you're like me and you're really struggling to diet or to start working out, but you need to do something to make a change, I think it's a really pretty easy way to like get started on that. And you adjust pretty quickly. It's hard at first because obviously you're hungry, but your body adjusts really fast. And it's not even a thought at this point for me. And in the years since, I've actually read quite a bit about intermittent fasting being like independently pretty good for mental health and gut health and stuff, which we're also finding out is way more related to mental health than we ever thought previously. So on top of being kind of like my lazy guy way of dropping some weight and sparking me to get in better shape, it may have helped mentally just like inherently from fasting. But above all else, literally above everything else that I did in over 9 years of trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me, and I've left a lot of things out of this video, I've only focused on the main things I think made the biggest difference, but I've done cognitive behavioral therapy, I was in support groups, I tried various diets, I tried spending specific amounts of time in nature, vitamin supplements, childhood trauma therapy, I tried all kinds of stuff. And I'm telling you, the thing that made the biggest and most immediate, most dramatic impact, more than any of all of the stuff that I just listed and more than any of the other three like big things that I've talked about in this video, was quitting nicotine. And for this one, I don't have like a ton of research to point to other than people's experiences that I've read and my own just personal experience. But unequivocally, the single thing that made the biggest difference for me was regarding my anxiety, as severe as it was quitting Zen. I smoked in college and then I vaped for a few years to quit smoking, and then I quit and I used Zen for a few years. And I was always so afraid of quitting altogether because I'd always read that quitting nicotine and nicotine withdrawal often causes anxiety, like as a symptom of the withdrawals. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. But in July of 2024, I just gone through like a really rough first half of the year. I broke my nose and kind of almost died from like a severely infected abscess that formed because of that. It's a story for another time. I was going through some rough like other shit, relationship-wise, job-wise, health-wise, and I was so broken and so desperate and so out of ideas that I just decided to like quit Zen, which sounds so silly and insignificant in the severity of that situation. But I am telling you, man, within a week of quitting Zen, my anxiety was gone. And I've had rough times since, anxiety-wise, relapses, like I said, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's some weird chemical like thing specific to me that my body was like rejecting nicotine in some weird way, but ever since I quit Zen in 2024, my anxiety has been more manageable and minor than it has been since I first started really suffering from it in like 2015 or so. And I'm a huge whiny baby weenie. Quitting nicotine was not that hard. Like for real, you can do it. It takes suffering through like 4 days of bad headaches and stuff. But that was so easy for me to handle because by the second day I was already feeling so much better mentally that it was like, oh, why would I ever go back? I'll live the rest of my life with these headaches if I have to. And literally since then, I've never had a major panic attack. The longest stint of my adult life, I've been in a better place with it than I ever have been. I really think that there is something to the vaping shit, man, the Zens and the vaping. I don't know. I just have a feeling, I know it sounds pretty cringe and like old man of me, but I don't know. Quitting nicotine kind of saved my life, and I don't have a ton of answers for this one. I just have my experience, but I don't know. It seems worth a shot to me anyway, based on like what it did for me. Okay, so in conclusion, anxiety itself is a natural physiological event, an evolutionary adaptation that exists for a reason. And to me, if anxiety has become pathological, if it's as severe as it was for me, it just seems to me that it's your body like screaming at you. And this is a little woo-woo, like hippy-dippy for me. I'm usually a lot more grounded and like by the book than this, but it's just what I believe based on my experience. If you are really suffering, I think it is worth a shot to like experiment on yourself a little bit, to try to figure out what it is that is causing it. If you don't want to, if you're not satisfied with treating the symptoms, with getting a medication that alleviates the symptoms of an anxiety that you intuitively know is still there, then it just seems worth it to me to try to get to the bottom of it. And I don't know, hopefully my story can give some people who are struggling out there like some ideas to like places to try to start getting to the bottom of it. I love getting to the bottom. I'm always trying to get to the bottom, you know what I'm saying? All right, thanks for watching. See you all next time. In today's post-video video, I'm gonna read a few post-breakup poems because I'm feeling a little indignant and in my sad girl era, and I wrote these poems over the last few months, navigating for the first time in my life a breakup that I wasn't almost immediately thankful for, a breakup that I wasn't ready for, one that has felt confusing and frustrating and really hard because I haven't been able to like immediately hate her, and the anger and resentment that I've always kind of relied on to help me through a rough breakup wasn't there. And I don't know, I'm happy, I've healed a lot, I've been able to take off the rose-colored glasses and see that it wasn't healthy, that it wasn't working, that I deserve better. But I am struggling a little bit with a lack of like closure, and I don't know, maybe this will be a little cathartic for me. Sorry for being so personal and main. Anyway, here we go. There is broken glass in my feet. There is broken glass in both of my feet. In abundance, it juts out of my heels. The balls of my feet ache and bleed, and sharp pains mark every step. The more cautiously I attempt to walk, the more gingerly I place my feet on the ground, the deeper the shards are forced into my skin. But with every agonizing step, I'm further from the spill. Survival. Moment to moment, in the brief seconds between distractions, when I forget to forget, when reality is able to point its sinister eyes in my direction, and it temporarily holds my blurry, disengaged gaze, moment to moment, there exists no redeeming qualities of melancholy. In the actual throes of depressive chapter, there is only survival. There is only ancestral, biological, ugly, and bloody survival. It is not a time of reflection. It is not a time of introspection. It is not a time of learning. These are not moments that exist at all, and neither do we in them. And moment to moment, in the brief seconds between distractions, we breathe, we drink from the stream, we kill. These are not moments of reflection. These are not moments of introspection. These are not moments of learning. There are none. There is only survival. Our personal narratives exist in retrospective and in retrospective alone. We do not improve from these moments. We do not reflect upon them. We do not learn from these moments. We learn from surviving them. The horror. A guy on a podcast said Poke Bowl today, and I cried. One day I will look back on this and we will think of it so sweetly, or one day I will look back on this and be so embarrassed. And one more breakup poem. I hope that you find happiness. I do. And I hope that you find the person that meets expectations. And I'm sorry I couldn't keep up with the Kardashians. Not the time, sorry. An honorable breakup is amicable, separate ways, mutual, hope the best for blank. And I know I am imperfect, stubborn, distracted, scatterbrained, self-concerned. I hope that you find happiness. I do. But in all honesty, I can't help but hope that in retrospect, you regret not meeting me where I was when we were. Alternate breakup poem. F you times 1 billion trillion million. All right, love you guys. Bye.